There is a number you need to know. It is 219. This is not a casualty figure, nor is it a polling number, but rather, it is a section number buried inside the 2027 National Defense Authorization Act, the $1.15 trillion bill that funds the entire United States military. Within it is a provision called Section 219. It is formally titled the United States-Israel Defense Technology Cooperation Initiative. Here is what it does. It directs the Secretary of Defense to appoint a senior Pentagon official whose entire job is to weave Israeli defense technology directly into official US weapons programs, into missile defense, counter-drone systems, cyber warfare, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, autonomous weapons, directed energy, and the factories and supply lines that produce all of it. It creates a permanent framework for joint research, cooperation, licensing deals, and data sharing between the US and Israeli militaries across domains so fundamental to American defense capability that once the integration is complete, there is no clean way to separate them. The Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft put it plainly. Section 219 would do more to intertwine the US military with the Israeli military than the more than $200 billion in military assistance Israel has received since 1948. $200 billion in 75 years was labeled as aid. Aid requires a giver and a receiver, two separate parties, two separate interests. Section 219 doesn't just deepen the relationship. It raises the question this channel has been circling since episode 1. What if the separation was always the fiction? What if the aid was never foreign? And what if what we are watching now is not a merger, but a disclosure? When politicians across the aisle notice the same thing and try to stop it together, pay attention. A bipartisan coalition formed to remove it. Republican Thomas Massie and Democrat Ro Khanna co-sponsored an amendment to strip Section 219 from the bill. They were joined by Bernie Sanders in the Senate. On the right, the concern was American sovereignty. On the left, it was Israel's conduct in Gaza. Different reasons, same conclusion. This does not belong in this bill. The amendment never came to a vote. The committee that decides which amendments Congress is allowed to debate simply removed it from the list. No recorded vote on removal, no public debate, no opportunity for members to go on the record. The mechanism that exists to allow Congress to scrutinize legislation was used to prevent Congress from scrutinizing this legislation. One senior Democrat who had previously supported the provision changed his mind and said publicly, "I cannot support endless conflict." He would have voted to remove it if given the chance. He was not given the chance. The bill hit procedural obstacles in late June, not because of Section 219, but because of an unrelated dispute. Section 219 survived. On July 14th, the bundle advanced to a floor vote. Section 219 is still inside it. Only 16% of Americans support arming Israel without conditions. The provision that would give Israel deeper military integration than any NATO ally was buried in a must-pass defense bill, and its opponents were denied a vote. This is not a procedural accident. This is how you pass something you know the public would reject if they were asked directly. The bill is moving. The fight to remove Section 219 is not over, but the opposition has been blocked from a vote at every turn. By the time this episode airs, the situation may have developed further. To understand what Section 219 actually means, you have to understand what it would lock into place and what it would make permanent. start with what the Pentagon's own defense intelligence agency said about Israel. In its annual threat assessment, the DIA rated Israel's espionage threat against the United States as critical, the highest designation, surpassing even adversarial states. The Jonathan Pollard affair, the AIPAC espionage investigation, the documented pattern of Israeli intelligence operations on American soil, these are not historical footnotes. They are the operational context within which Congress is proposing to embed Israeli systems directly into American military infrastructure. Section 219 does not create a single weapons program that can be cancelled in next year's budget. It creates a framework administered by a permanently appointed executive agent inside the Pentagon that distributes Israeli technology across contracts, licensing deals, joint ventures, and data sharing arrangements simultaneously. Once embedded across those vectors, it cannot be reversed by a single vote or a single administration. It shifts oversight from the annual public appropriations process, where Congress votes on specific spending and the public can track it, to the opaque Pentagon program management, invisible to ordinary scrutiny. Benjamin Netanyahu described his intent before the bill was even introduced. He said he wanted to phase out direct US military aid to Israel and replace it with a deeper defense partnership built on joint development and industrial cooperation. He was describing exactly what Section 219 delivers, and he endorsed the provision personally in writing to a member of Congress. Now connect this to the geography. Israel has, since 2024, expanded its military presence into southern Lebanon, the West Bank, Gaza, and parts of southern Syria. The two secret bases in Iraq's western desert, which we documented in an earlier episode, were operated with full American knowledge and American air cover in breach of the 2008 US-Iraq Strategic Framework Agreement. The Strait of Hormuz was closed, reopened, and closed again, and the terms of the reopening were set in Versailles without consulting a single Arab government in the region. Now add Section 219, add a permanent Pentagon official whose job is to integrate Israeli technology into American weapon systems, add joint ventures in AI, autonomous weapons, and directed energy, the technologies that will define the next generation of military conflict, and a legal framework that makes the integration effectively irreversible, regardless of who is elected. And ask the question this channel has been building towards since episode 1. Was the separation between the United States and Israel ever real? There is a theory that circulates at the margins of geopolitical analysis, easily dismissed as conspiratorial, that Israel has always functioned not as an independent state allied to the United States, but as an extension of American power in West Asia, a forward operating base with a flag, a permanent presence in the region that provides Washington with plausible deniability for operations it cannot conduct directly. The conventional response to that theory is that it overstates the case, that Israel has its own interests, its own policies, its own foreign policy, that the partnership and relationship has real tensions, that the tail does not wag the dog. Section 219 is the moment when that conventional response becomes harder to sustain, because here is what the current trajectory actually looks like when you plot it on a map. The United States is withdrawing from its role as a global hegemon. The dollar's reserve status is contested. The Afghanistan withdrawal was a visible signal. The Venezuela operation was conducted and concluded rapidly. The Iran ceasefire was negotiated and signed and broken, and the cycle continues. The tone of American foreign policy under this administration is one of selective engagement. Maintain dominance in the Western Hemisphere, extract from the entanglements elsewhere. Let the regional architecture manage itself, everywhere except West Asia. In West Asia, the United States is not withdrawing. It is deepening. The bases in Iraq, the Versailles ceasefire on Israeli and American terms, the $110 billion Saudi arms deals, the F-35 components exempt from the partial arms suspension, the NSA intelligence sharing with Unit 8200, and now Section 219, a provision that embeds Israeli technology inside American weapon systems permanently, creating a defense industrial base that cannot be disentangled without dismantling significant portions of American military capability along with it. The US is retreating from global empire. It is consolidating in the Western Hemisphere, and it is retaining one regional proxy in West Asia, integrated so deeply into American military architecture that the proxy's interests and America's interests become, by legislative design, impossible to separate. The question is not whether this is what Section 219 does. The legislative text is public. The question is whether you believe it is happening by accident or by design. This channel judges by actions and not declarations, and the actions say that the pretense of separation was always thin and always contested. And it is being abandoned not because the relationship is ending, but because it no longer needs the pretense. Section 219 is not a new alliance. It is the old one becoming official. The world is complex. The noise is deliberate. The spectrum cuts through it.